There's a picture of 10 Pound Island, and I was shooting with a panorama camera. I shot it, probably a dozen times. I lined up that high watermark with the line of the city of Gloucester, and that was where it connected. It really is how the camera sees in the end.
Photojournalist, documentary filmmaker, photographer, artist. Nubar Alexanian has been looking at the world through a camera lens for over 50 years. His resume includes spreads across pages in Life magazine, the New York Times magazine, Boston magazine, and many more. Alexanian spent 5 years following musicians like Paul Simon and Emmylou Harris for his book, Where Music Comes From. He collaborated with renowned trumpeter Wynton Marsalis to create a small personal book entitled Jazz. From 1978 to 1989, Alexanian traveled to Peru, multiple trips facilitated by a Fulbright Award. The darks and lights of the images in that resulting book, Stones in the Road, act on the page with so much power they seem to have sinew and muscle. Alexanian has lived in Gloucester, Massachusetts for 50 years. He has created 2 books photographing that city, images that confess the day-to-day pathos and glory of this immigrant fishing community. And yet, at this point in his life, Alexanian is examining answers he thought he understood and posing new questions. Looking hard, for instance, at what exactly is a photograph, and asking the question with fresh emotion, what is home?
I would not use the word truth with photographs. I would use the word honesty. My sandbox is images metaphor, which means that my pictures are about how I feel about what I'm looking at. A photograph does not have to be about what's in front of the camera in order to be an honest picture. And that's where I live.
Feeling off balance, uncomfortable, is a place Alexanian trusts artistically.
Not knowing what you're doing is an important part of the process of making art. And for me, it's really important because if I know what I'm doing, most of the time I'm in a place I've already been.
And yet he's acutely aware of the difference between making art and photojournalism. In the 1980s, Alexanian decided to shoot a photo essay, his first, on Gloucester's most successful fishing family. He spent 2 years with the Brancaleone family, including 4 10-day offshore trips, in which he was miserably seasick. Alexanian took this photo essay to New York City, where from a payphone, he called the photo editor of Geo magazine. He said, "I'm downstairs. If you give me 10 minutes of your time, I'm sure you will buy this story." And she did. Later, that editor went on to Fortune magazine, and Alexanian went with her. He says that every project he's worked on has been a risk, but he believes in risk. In 2012, Alexanian's daughter Abby asked, "Will you go with me to Armenia?" Alexanian had grown up in a 100% Armenian family, resettled in Worcester, Massachusetts. He spoke Armenian as a child. He traveled to 30 countries for work, but he knew nothing about Armenia. In 1915, under the cover of World War I, the Ottoman Turks murdered 1.5 million ethnic Armenians. Alexanian's 4 grandparents fled 4 different villages in what was historically Armenia, but which is considered Turkey today. The photographer and his daughter arranged to go on a guided tour of this area with 10 other people, each preparing to visit the villages where their relatives had lived. Alexanian was completely unprepared for the emotions he would feel. He later returned to historic Armenia with a cameraman. This journey became Alexanian's most recent documentary, entitled Finding Armenia, a dramatic narrative that ultimately asks, what is home?
I live in a fishing village here in Massachusetts. It's a great place. I've lived here for 50 years. This is home to me, but there's another home. And if you're an immigrant, there has to be another home.
From his early professional years, Alexanian has viewed his subjects with a stark sensitivity. His book Jazz opens with the words of American saxophonist Ornette Coleman. These words could apply also to what Alexanian sees when he takes a picture. Every living thing has something inside of it that does not want to die. Find out what that is and play that.
Yeah, I've got them.
Hi, everybody.
All right, is this working?
You can just speak in your regular room voice.
I can?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So that was a joy to create. Thank you again, Nubar, for taking so much time with me. And we will have a Q&A with Nubar and you guys afterwards. So I just want to talk about that photograph, Nubar. Can we go right there?
Sure.
Unless you want to add anything before we start.
I just want you to know that I was in the 1978 and that storm. We were all there.
Where were you?
Just in Essex.
Oh, okay. Oh,
We have some good shots of Essex in there.
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry. So the Branglione family, they go out. I went on 4 10-day trips with them, and she's really, when she says that I was sick, I mean, I get really.
So what was that like?
Yeah.
I mean, you
so
must have
actually,
been so sick.
okay. So what's happening in this picture is, I am in the pilot house with the captain, and I have another fisherman with me, and I have the window up so that I can take the picture, but I'm throwing up. I swear to God. And so I asked him to put his foot in the small of my back because, we're moving like this and like this. And I just photographed, and, this family, I just loved this family. These people, these guys really work hard. I mean, these cables are pulling the nets with these doors to keep them down. And every 3 hours, they haul back for 10 days. And I just was, I had no idea.
So was this particular weather, was that a stormy day? Was it
Yeah.
So that everyone is aware, okay, this is rough, but we're just going to keep working, right?
Right.
So how much of this did you see when you on these 10-day trips? Was it often like this, and
Yeah.
was it scary?
No, I mean, no, there's you saw another picture of this boat in color, right? That, and it's beautiful, and the light's great, and that was okay. That was the easiest trip for me.
This particular trip.
I think it was a different one,
Okay. Oh,
but in
okay.
the same.
Yeah. So tell us more about the Branglione family and how. Well, actually, I'm kind of curious in the actual work.
Yeah.
And did they have shifts of fishing? Did they, we had that wonderful picture of them at the table,
Right, having
dining.
breakfast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so when they haul back, they put the nets out again, and they start cleaning on deck. And so there's the water right in the front, and they keep tossing the gutted fish into there so they're clean. And then one of the fishermen is down below icing all the fish because again, it's a 10-day trip. Day boats don't do that because they just come right back in. And everybody's on deck every time something happens with that net. If it comes on board, everybody's on. If it's going out, everybody's on, and it's just every 3 hours. It's unbelievable. I mean, and now so back then. Here's the thing. Back then, there were over 300 boats in our harbor. Now there's 25?
Yeah.
And there's not many boats like this. And they get out of this early. And I think I've never talked to other fishermen.
They're not fishing anymore?
No.
Yeah.
No, but they got out. They were the first boat, I think, to get out. There's a second. There's a Joseph. This is the Joseph and Lucia II. There's also the Joseph and Lucia III, which is the brother, and so the whole family have. And when they were out there, it was that kind of time where other fishermen wanted to know where they were fishing. There was not the kind of GPS and all that we have now. And so the two brothers would talk in code over the radio. And and I mean, it didn't seem weird to me, but
Oh yeah. You know where the fish are.
right.
Yeah.
They knew where the fish are. I mean, they really knew. I mean, now again, with the technology, somebody could grab a whole group, a whole ton of fish.
Yeah.
Because you can see it.
So how about in fact, we just learned, I think there was a news story recently of somebody in a fishing boat in trouble, and the other fishing boats in the area, go right to them as fast as they can.
Right.
So did you witness any of that kind of action?
No, I mean, we did, the Coast Guard came on board, and did their check. That was, dramatic for me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look, I spent a lot of time just in my bunk. And I lost, on my first trip, I lost 20 pounds.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. I want to go. No, I can tell you don't want to go. But, it's like the little things were really very moving. I mean, for example, when you're out there, they all say that, the whole family comes when they're going to leave, go out. And it's usually at the end of a day or in the evening. Mm. And then so I got a call one day when I wasn't out there with them, and it was the captain's son, and he said, come, I'll pick you up. And so he came and picked me up, and we went, and he wanted to go down to Stacy Boulevard and watch his boat go off into the disappear on the horizon, and he was choked up the whole time. I'm like, this guy is hardcore. Wow. Really an incredible guy. And he hurt his back, so he couldn't go, but he was and that was, that's how they felt about their families. Yeah. I mean, it was really something.
Yeah. That's probably one of the most poignant stories I've heard about a fishing family, that it still means that much. Yeah. For him to watch his own boat go to sea. Yeah. Well, how about
the weather?
The weather. Well, no, what I was going to ask is something different. For you as a photographer and an artist shooting something like this, what does that mean? Or shooting any of the Broccolioni family, but I actually particularly want to talk about this one. What are you feeling about this shot?
About this photograph? Mm-hmm. It's become sort of a very famous picture. I mean, everybody who does stories about fishermen for a long time wanted this picture.
Do you get rice every time they use it?
Of course, and money.
Oh, good.
So I don't know. There. It's quite a collection of my photographs of this family and fishermen. Mm-hmm. It's the first picture story I did because I thought, I live in Gloucester. What do I know about this? Nothing. Mm-hmm. And and so I did it. I mean, what's amazing is at night they would do it, right? So at night the lights would come on deck, and they would be, cleaning fish. And sometimes, when they would haul back, that entire, I have pictures of this, the entire deck is loaded with fish, and you're up to your knees with them. And so they have to clean all of that all those fish. The net is out, trolling, and a lot of times the net was pulled in before they finished. So they were, there were times when they were awake for 10, 20 hours. I mean, and I just photographed an hour here and an hour there.
So, I imagine the captain could open that window and take out a camera and take a picture. Say,
Yeah.
wow, this is so cool. But it wouldn't be that picture.
No.
So,
Well, it could be, but it wouldn't be like that.
yeah.
Okay.
So what makes this New Bars picture?
I don't know. I mean, my pictures have to do with a moment that has some sort of graphic that fits with the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not the kind of photographer who would make sure that the horizon was all lined up. That is lined up to me. But, but if you look at the framing, I'm tilted that way so the cables are shown more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know that because
when you're taking it, you don't.
Yeah, because the one thing, just to talk about photography for a second, the one thing that's a real problem, maybe for lots of artists, but for a photographer, is I don't think. If I'm thinking, I'm in trouble. And so, as I've gotten older, it's kind of like meditating. I mean, it's like you get into this space, and I'm just looking. And I'm not. But again, if I'm thinking, I'm not going to take one picture that I like, not one.
You weren't thinking when you took that picture of Cooper, which is his dog.
Yes, a little dog. Yes, no, I wasn't. No.
Yeah, it's such a great picture. So, okay, one last thought about that, New Bar, is what did you feel when you developed this shot?
Well,
when it came out of you were still developing things, I
right.
imagine.
These are negatives.
Yeah.
So I was shooting with. I had 4 cameras with me, and I had the 2 cameras that I used. I used Leica cameras only, except on this story, I bought 2 small Canon cameras because, the salt air would just eat. It's going to eat.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've had a number of cameras eaten out by just the salt air. So now, why was I talking about that?
Well, I asked how your feelings when you saw it come out of the.
Oh, right. So
developed.
Right. So I was shooting in black and white, and then also in color with Kodachrome, because I thought I wanted to sell the story to this one magazine.
Did you know it was the shot that
well,
you would?
But okay, that's a whole other discussion because you don't want to be a photographer if you can't deal with what's the word failure.
You don't even know the word.
Yeah. No, but I mean so
Exactly.
So the other story I just want to tell is so when I finished this, when I felt like I had it, I had sold it to Geo Magazine, and I told the picture editor that I thought I wanted to take the family out to dinner, and she said, "Oh, absolutely, I'll cover it."
The Brancaleone family.
Yeah, the Brancaleone family. Now, back then, the bill was like $700, and when she saw it, she was like, "What?" I said, "Aren't you following this story?"
Yeah, right. You see their size and how big they are, the family itself.
No, but what I did was I showed them the black and white and the color at this restaurant that we were eating, and I had music playing off of records, and they were in tears the whole time, and it meant the world to me. And then, right when the piece came out in Geo magazine, it was a beautiful 14-page spread of beautiful photographs. The writer was excellent, and I went down to the dock, and because the captain's son said, "You got to come down here and listen to this." So they were all talking about it. All the other boats, they were talking about the story, and so somebody was reading it to them in Sicilian, and they were apparently, is this right? Is this true? No, it's not true. We don't talk like that. Stuff like that. I mean, and just so it was.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So it meant a lot.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else you want to add to this conversation?
It was a long time ago.
Well, when was it? Because, a lot has changed, but it wasn't that long.
1978.
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, the same year as
No,
the
wait a
blizzard.
minute. Was it 78?
We're doing the night.
In the early 80s.
Oh, yeah.
No, we didn't do that.
So the piece in Geo magazine was 1981.
Okay.
So yeah, that's roughly.
Close. Oh, yeah, definitely close. Yeah.
Perfect.
That's right. It was the perfect. Yeah, you would
Right.
know. Yeah. All right. Well,
All right.
we can take questions from everybody later.
Yes.
But
Thank you.
now, so Nubar, we'll have you back up here
Okay.
at the end. Okay. Thank
Yep.
you. And. And next we will hear and watch the beautifully produced and directed video about the Blizzard of '78 by Cory Kookaroo.
In late January 1978, New England was digging out from the remnants of an historic winter storm that buried parts of the Ohio Valley and upper Midwest in 30 to 50 inches of snow. Known nationally as the Great Blizzard of 1978, it dumped nearly 3 feet on Cape Ann. Just 2 weeks later, 3 huge weather systems converged off the Atlantic coast, creating one gigantic swirl that enveloped much of the eastern seaboard. A new moon brought astronomical high tides and churned an immeasurable amount of moisture. The result? A supersized nor'easter of epic proportions that was New England's worst storm of the 20th century. I'm Cory Kookaroo for 1623 Studios, and this is the story of the Blizzard of '78. Monday morning, February 6th, started ordinarily enough for the work and school week. Snow had been predicted overnight, but by daybreak, hardly a flurry had fallen. Folks chalked up the blown forecast to know-it-all weathermen whose predictably apocalyptic predictions were wrong, again. But by midday, as if in a flash, windswept snowflakes fluttered suddenly and violently in all directions. No one was prepared. Snow totals mounted faster than shovels could shovel, and gale-force winds led to dangerous drifting. Governor Michael Dukakis urged schools and major employers to send everyone home early. Even plow trucks couldn't keep up. Many broke down and were abandoned in snowbanks. Entire swaths of roadways disappeared. Guardrails and street signs were being swallowed whole. Endless streams of commuters became hopelessly stuck in rush-hour traffic with zero visibility and no way out. To make matters worse, the storm stalled, gaining hurricane strength and pounding the region with whiteout conditions for 33 straight hours. Over 40 inches fell on parts of Cape Ann, a record. Some storekeepers and gallery owners in the 4 communities had to stay in place overnight. But what differentiated the Blizzard of '78 from other winter catastrophes here was the relentless storm surge. Seas reaching 30 to 40 feet slammed the coast through 4 high tide cycles, flooding and flash freezing between day and night. The Essex Causeway sat in 4 feet of water from Main Street to Eastern Avenue. The lot behind Manchester's Town Hall could only be navigated by dinghy. Gloucester's Blimmen Canal was overcome, cresting over the Newell Stadium concession stand and rushing over Stacey Boulevard to Pavilion Beach. The Good Harbor Beach footbridge didn't stand a chance. And everything from lobster gear to cars were strewn across T-Wharf and Bearskin Neck in Rockport. Seawalls around Cape Ann were demolished. 50-foot wide sections of granite barrier at Lanes Cove blew apart. In Manchester, there was nothing left to protect Singing Beach, White Beach, or Black Beach. The pier at Masconoma Park broke off and floated away, as did the walkway at Tuck's Point. Rockport's front and back beaches practically disappeared. Coastal homes, hotels, and fish shacks were literally picked up, moved, and smashed into pieces from Long Beach to Pigeon Cove to Folly Cove. The most iconic building to perish was Rockport's Motif No. 1, the lobster red fishing shed made famous by plein air artists who painted it more than any other building in the country. On Tuesday, February 7th, the blizzard raged on, and just before noon, Motif No. 1 gave out from under itself and slumped into Rockport Harbor, where it rested on the dragger Calypso. When the boat was freed, the building dropped, broke to pieces, and floated in the harbor for days. Dozens of locals salvaged boards out of the water for mementos. However, the loss of Motif No. 1 paled in comparison to the tragedy that took place offshore. The huge oil tanker Global Hope ran aground off Salem. Back at Gloucester's inner harbor, experienced skipper Frank Quirk readied his 47-foot pilot boat, Can Do, to rescue the tanker's 32 crewmen. Quirk was a celebrated hero in Gloucester, having received the city's highest honor, the Mariners Medal, twice for countless rescue efforts at sea. Though Quirk wanted to reach the Global Hope alone, 4 others insisted on joining. Marina operator Donald Wilkinson, electrician and boater Norman David Curley, restaurateur and commercial fisherman Kenneth Fuller, and retired Marine and Coast Guardsman Charles Bucko. They left shortly after dark during the height of the storm. 2 hours later, Quirk, using a hand radio, relayed that the Can Do lost its radar and had its windshield blasted out. He was concussed and bleeding. They were somewhere near Magnolia, having turned around at Baker's Island. People who heard the boat was in trouble drove to the Beverly-Salem Bridge, Singing Beach, and Magnolia Pier to aim their headlights at the ocean to guide the Can Do. Crewmen stuffed mattresses in the windows to block rushing seawater and desperately tried to restart the engine. It was 2 hours before dawn. That was the last communication from the vessel. Days later, Quirk, Wilkinson, Curley, and Fuller washed ashore on neighboring beaches, as did the wreckage from the Can Do. Bucko was found in the engine room. When the storm finally passed, the region was in shambles. Every beach in Massachusetts was transformed. Many were without heat, power, or running water. Ice downed power lines and trees, further hampering recovery efforts. Thousands had been stranded on roads and public transit systems, and 14 people died on Interstate 95 when mountainous snowdrifts trapped exhaust fumes inside idling vehicles. volunteers on skis and snowmobiles helped emergency personnel evacuate victims. Governor Dukakis shut down highways, trains, and air travel. The entire week was declared a legal holiday so that the state could clean up. With Route 128 shut down, mail service was canceled, and stores quickly ran out of bread and milk. National Guard troops arrived from Fort Bragg and Fort Devens. Snow was hauled to nearby harbors and dumped. In all, 100 people in the Northeast were killed and nearly 5,000 injured. In today's terms, the storm caused over $2.5 billion in damage. It took Cape Ann weeks to recover. The last of the snow didn't melt until late spring. But one important rebuild happened almost immediately. As Rockport residents faithfully picked the splinters of Motif No. 1 out of the harbor, a fund was started to create an exact replica of the simple 1,008 square foot post and beam structure. Precise specifications were taken 40 years before, in case the iconic shabby shack caught fire. Throughout spring and summer, locals worked painstakingly to honor the original footprint atop the granite blocks. By Thanksgiving, fittingly, determined Rockporters erected a new Motif No. 1 at the end of Bradley Wharf, signature red paint, lobster buoys, and all, a testament to coastal Cape Ann's resiliency. Because of the blizzard of '78, precautionary travel bans and faster coastal evacuations are now the norm. These lessons, coupled with modern telecommunications and meteorology, have citizens, public safety officials, and first responders better equipped to deal with extreme weather. Since that historic winter of 1978, we've endured similar snowfalls, ferocious floods, and perfect disasters. But no weather event has ever left its lasting mark on Cape Ann quite like the storm of the century. Yeah, that's a tough piece to do because it's, so much destruction in this a really sad story there. So the first thing I wanted to bring up to Chris was something that I didn't know about until you wrote about it years ago, but your personal connection and interaction with the events that evening.
At the time, if everybody knows where the Thai Choice restaurant recently closed, where it is, that was the Penis Fish Market back in the 50s and 60s. And Joe Jr., he was confined to a wheelchair. He was into CB radios and scanners and all that stuff. And his father had shut down the business, so he took the building and made it a CB store, because CBs were the rage back then with scanners and everything else, and shortwave too. And he hired me to work with him, because I was always interested in that kind of thing. And on the afternoon that the storm was brewing, on the 5th, we had occasionally had visits from not only the CO of the Coast Guard, Parody, come for us for crystals. Back then you needed a crystal for every individual channel in your scanner, so they were always adding crystals or whatever. And also Frank Quirk came in occasionally just to see. He was a good friend with Joey. So on that afternoon, Frank Quirk, Ken Wilkerson came in. I believe one of the other guys stayed out in the car, out in his Jeep, and they came in and they asked for a handheld radio. He was thinking of going out at about 4 o'clock that afternoon, because he had been in touch with CO Parody down at the Coast Guard station. So he came in and asked if he could borrow a handheld from Joey, and Joey said he had to put a couple crystals in it for him, and that's what he did. He said, okay, we'll wait. So right around 4:30, we had the radio done. Frank and Kenny, who I knew anyway from Rockport. He was Rockport. He was a cigarette boat racer.
Oh, yeah.
I used to own the Captain's Bounty. And so they left at about 4:30 and left the harbor within an hour or so. Basically, Joey and I were the last two to see them alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I took Joey let me take a scanner home for the night. Well, it ended up being for days. And I listened overnight, and I could hear a lot of the transmissions. I didn't hear, I fell asleep around 3 o'clock. I heard the last one before 3 o'clock about the window being broken, and it wasn't Quirk on the radio, it was somebody else, which meant that Quirk was hurt, and they were trying to stuff a mattress in the window. And also, there's a spot, I don't know if it's in the book, the last book that came out, which is very detailed. I think it's called 10 Hours to Dawn, something like that. But when they left the harbor, the winds were about 40 to 50 miles an hour behind their back, northeast. So they're going southwest down the coast. And that's fine. You're just going along. But at some point, you got to take an exit and cross all that Michigas, all those high waves.
Right.
You've got to somehow get into the harbor, into Beverly Harbor. And I believe, it's my belief and belief of some people, that they got twisted around because at one point they said they were on the table, quote, the table, which is a very shallow shoal rock off of Salem, or off of Beverly. And that's where they were stuck. And then after that, it was over.
Right.
So, but that was it's just so sometimes eerie to think about. But,
Yeah.
But that was just a massive storm.
It's what was the impact that the accident had? Because they were well-known folks around the community and the working waterfront.
Only a year before, he had saved a bunch of people off the Chester Poling right off of Eastern Point that had broken in half. And this guy was no rookie. I mean, he knew his stuff, and he just met his match. Unfortunately.
Right. Which I guess brings us to the question about the strength of the storm itself and what made it such an anomaly. And we've seen big weather events like this before, but what were the elements and the ingredients that made that storm in 1978?
Oh, you mentioned them. Our storms, the damaging storms that we remember, the blizzard there was one in '69. The perfect storm, of course, is one too under this category. The blizzard of '78, of course, especially with the new moon tide, with the very high astronomical tides. But it's the longevity of the storm, the duration of the storm. If it moves slow, there's two things that are happening. It's moving slow because there's high pressure trying to stop it. And if it's trying to go into high pressure, it's creating much higher winds. And it's slowing down. So if you have 2, 3, 4 high tide cycles, the water's got nowhere to go back out at the low tide cycle. So then you just put another 4 or 5 inches on it, another 4 or 5 inches on it on the next high tide cycle. And it just pummels the coast. It's just relentless. So, but it's mostly the duration of the storm, which makes the difference. Again, the perfect storm was born from a Hurricane Grace, was born off of Nova Scotia, came back towards us, made a loop, and then went over Nova Scotia again, giving us I think it was 5 high tide cycles. Of course, most people inland don't know because it wasn't a snowstorm. They didn't even know it was happening on the coast. Most of them found out because of the movie what really happened.
Right.
But the devastation along the coast was just as bad as '78. And to that point, you showed one picture of Lanesville's breakwater.
Yeah.
Totally leveled with only a few teeth left. That's what happened at Pigeon Cove. And if it wasn't for the breakwater that's out in Sandy Bay, the outer part of Rockport Harbor, not the inside, but outside, if it wasn't for that harbor, a lot of downtown Rockport would have been wiped out.
Wow.
It really would have been wiped out. That breakwater continues to protect Rockport. And if you look now, Lanesville has a beautifully fortified breakwater that they've created. Same thing with Pigeon Cove, beautifully symmetrical, and it's reinforced, rebar reinforced, and they just recently did the Rockport Inner Harbor breakwater. So you could say, well, that storm couldn't have been that bad, like in the future, something comparable, because it didn't do that to the breakwater. Well, no, we know how to build breakwaters better.
Right.
So it's always going to be judged. Blizzard 78 is probably always going to be judged by the damage, at least locally, what it did.
Mm-hmm. And so now with the way climate patterns are changing and ocean waters are getting warmer, can a catastrophic winter event such as that still happen today, do you think?
Oh, it'll happen again.
Yeah.
It'll happen again. Again, you might not say it was as bad because you won't see that damage of all the shacks in Pigeon Cove Harbor into the harbor with all the rocks gone. But it will happen again. You know, I think the biggest thing is like Plum Island erosion, Cape Cod erosion, all the vulnerable spots. The only reason we're sitting here right now because we're on a big dome of granite, Rockport and Gloucester, just on a big dome of granite, and that's the only reason we're here. We would be the coast would go straight down from Maine to Boston if we were just earth or sand. You know? So
well, so I also want to ask when your interest in meteorology and weather, where does that come from? Did you have it then? Did you have it then?
March of 1960.
Really? I
was 5 years old. My first blizzard. And that is still one of the top 5 storms in New England by a certain index. But I got more interested over the years. I found out, I didn't know for years, but my mother wrote down the observations every day on her Rockport National Bank calendar. And she had dozens of them, And I didn't know that, but I guess I inherited something in that vein. But I just think it's something nobody can control. Nobody can control, and there's just a mystery about it that makes it obviously to me a challenge now because I have followers that depend on me.
Yeah.
And I like that challenge, and I don't know. I just think it's a continuation of what I grew up with.
Right.
Having that first snow day as a 6-year-old, in school was probably the kicker.
But instead of playing, you were just saying, why did this happen and how? Let's get into that. So you may not know this.
Or why did it stop?
Right.
Keep going. I want tomorrow off.
So I don't know if you know this. I actually went to meteorology school.
Did you?
I went to Linden State in northern Vermont.
Yeah.
I was classmates with Cindy Fitzgibbon, from Channel 5 now. But and I can tell you firsthand that weather nuts and meteorology folks take their weather super seriously.
Oh, yeah.
So you see the following you have online, like you really can't fake it.
No.
You can't fudge your passion for it too. Yeah. So do you feel any pressure when you're doing these daily forecasts or something to live up to people's expectations?
No, again, it's a challenge, but what's happened over, I think, the last few years is I get feedback that you did good on that one. It's a lot of times I would say, damn it, I missed this or I missed that, or I'm so picky. I'd say, I said 3 to 5 inches and it was 5.5.
Yeah.
I blew it, something like that. But now I'm more confident. Like this week coming up. Tomorrow we got 2 or 3, 4 inches coming. Saturday night to Sunday we have 4, 5, 6, 7 inches coming, and we might
remember that he said 4 to 7.
We might have a big one coming by a week from today.
Really?
Yeah. Valentine's Day storm.
Oh, all right.
But I just feel more confident with the success, and the tools online have exponentially increased, in a positive way, over just the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. More and more people are getting into interpolating, the information into good graphic, not hazy things. The modeling, everything.
We're back at Bruce Schwegler with the marker.
Yeah.
Just drawing the low pressure system.
John Kent.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So Chris, stay right there. Let's bring back Heather and Newbar to continue the discussion and field some questions from you out there. Yeah.
I'll be here, Corey.
Yeah. Here's fine.
So what's the weather going to be like a week from today?
Oh, I don't know that. It could be a good storm next week. They keep pushing it. I just want to say, I've been a fan of yours for a long time. I had no idea of your background like that. I've just seen a bunch of your photography because I am a budding photographer. I loved Ansel Adams 40, 50 years ago, and I still dabble in it. I put some on my weather page occasionally, and but I just want to say, it's a pleasure to meet you. It's an honor to meet you, and I had no idea what.
Well, thank
Your
you.
background.
That's very moving. Wow.
Very cool. So just so you know, so we'll take questions, or we can have a little discussion here. Because you're not mic'd, when you ask something, I'll probably repeat it for those who are going to watch the broadcast at a future date. So in case it just seems a little weird that I'm doing that. But does anyone have a question for Neubauer? Yep, sure.
I never
Okay.
crop my pictures ever.
Wait, hold on. We have to.
So that was
repeat
it.
the
So yeah, so
question.
Neubauer. So the
Yeah.
question to Neubauer was, did you crop that picture, and
No,
how
he asked
so?
me how I cropped it.
Right, and how? Right.
Yeah.
No, but I don't. So that's just not. I don't do that. It's not. I mean, it's a long story, but it's just a different way to shoot. You know. Yes.
I was wondering when you sold the Brank-Leone pictures to the magazine, were they black and white or a mixture or what?
So the question was, when Neubauer sold the pictures of the Brank-Leone family to the magazine, were they submitted in black and white only?
No, I shot color along with the black and white, and so
Did they take them?
yeah, they published it all in color. So, but thanks for that question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes?
Yes.
What was what kind of camera
Okay, so the question to Neubauer was, what kind of camera did he use?
I use mostly Leica cameras, and I also use Canon cameras. Big, yeah, they're big and heavy. Yes.
How did you make the connection and get that family to teach
Agreed.
you the way they did?
Yeah, so Neubauer was just asked how he made the connection to the Brank-Leones and to do that story.
Okay, so there was a problem because with getting their approval, because an author had written was on the Joseph and Lucia III and wrote a book, and they hated the book, because there was included bad language and stuff, and so I had to convince them that I wouldn't do that. And so, but they thought I was only going to come in one trip. I thought I was going to go on one trip, and so they just trust. So they just trusted me. I mean, in the beginning, I am trustworthy. I never really ask people to do anything for my camera unless it's like I'm doing a portrait where I'm going to ask people to do something. I never asked them to do anything for me.
How did you know them? How did you?
Well, because on the waterfront, on the waterfront, everyone knows, at that time, who the Brank-Leones were, and a lot of the vessels that were the same size really tried to, follow them. So that wasn't really hard to figure that out. And I met the captain and the crew, and they gave me the business most of the time, but they were great.
Anyone else? Really?
Question for Chris.
Yeah.
Oh.
For the question for Chris. Yeah. You tried.
Almost me.
So there was the blizzard of '78,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was the blizzard of 1980. And I happened to be working in a boatyard in Marblehead at that, and they had marked on the wall the height of the highest tide of the blizzard of the hurricane of 1938.
Okay.
Okay, which was the one which really lasted.
Portland Gale, in the end, it was
Yeah.
called, yeah.
And so it turned out that in '78, the high tide mark was quite a bit higher,
Mm-hmm.
6, 8, 10 inches.
Mhm.
but really noticeable.
Right.
In 1980, the mark was still higher yet by a few inches.
Really?
So I remember that blizzard as being spectacular from that point of view. So I wonder how you, looking back on that as a meteorologist, compare those, because they were very comparable in my memory.
Yeah, yeah. One thing I always disclaim is I'm not a meteorologist, just to say I'm a hobbyist. But I was not aware that the blizzard. I'm aware of the storm, like as a bunch of others, as being, second or third class type storms, not an upper tier storm. But I don't believe that storm is registered on the Boston. See, the blizzard of '78 and January of 2018 are not still the two highest tides, astronomical tides measured in Boston Harbor. I don't know if I'll have to look that list that they have online. I'll have to look and see if that's on there, because I don't believe it is. But that's not to say it didn't happen, because it could not happen there and it could happen.
Right.
It's microclimate. Everything is, storm surge and everything else. But I'm going to have to look into that. I did not. I vaguely remember knowing that's a good sized storm, but not one that's known for anything record breaking.
Well, and one of the things I learned off the bat when I started to research the piece is I hadn't realized that the Great Blizzard of '78 had already occurred in the upper Midwest
Yeah.
in January of that year. I have in-laws in the Midwest, so that's what they're referring to.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that we had already got decked here, and then the Blizzard of
Right.
'78 event
Right.
happened. So do you remember what,
The remnants of what they called the blizzard of '78 came through and gave us a good snowstorm, but it certainly wasn't any coastal damage or anything like that, loss of life, of course, or anything like that. So when our blizzard of '78 basically came through 2 weeks later.
right.
It's a whole different storm. It wasn't like a continuation of it. I always thought it was, but then I looked it up, and I kept looking up references to our blizzard of '78, and these Midwest ones are getting in my way.
Right, right.
because There's so many references to theirs as well.
Yeah, because it also reminds me of the winter of 2015, when it seemed to be 2 foot storm, 1 foot storm, 2 foot storm, like over and over and over again.
Snowmageddon.
Yeah, I just don't remember did the area ever have that cycle ever happen before.
No, but we had if you remember, in 2018, in March, we had what we called the four Easters. Four nor'easters within 12 days. On a 4-day cycle. They weren't crushing, but they were very good, prominent nor'east storms
Right.
with snow. The last 2 were mostly rain, because they ran so close to us that they drew in warmer water. And that is one of the other primary dictator of our big storms is the ocean water right now. We're surrounded, this island, by 40-degree water right now. So it's very intricate how a storm has to track to have it be all snow on the island. There's a lot of bridge storms from rain and sleet on island. You go over the bridge, you go by Sudbury's, you start going up the hill, and it's all snow.
Yeah, right.
That happens. When I used to commute to Woburn, that happened to me a dozen times. And same thing coming back. You could leave Woburn, Beverly, sunny, and you get ocean effect snow here, and you get 3 inches of snow that happened in like an hour or two. So Cape Ann is really a microclimate sticking out in the middle of, the ocean. That the water temperature dictates a lot of what happens. No,
Yeah.
no, I'll put it online. But if you want to call me, maybe give me some photo lessons.
Good.
Well, I would like to hear more about that.
That was when the Gloucester High School parking lot flooded all
We
the
had
cars.
that one shot.
Everybody said, "Yes, will you park safely?" And then all of a sudden, the water's up, and the cars were all destroyed.
Yeah.
That was a long duration storm. The water was driven down the river and into the harbor, and it had nowhere to go up into the high school, and all other low-lying areas like over near Lobster Land and the beach marshes and stuff.
Even like St. Peter's Park, right, where Tally's is, that where there
Yeah.
was just a river rushing down towards Beach Court and Pavilion Beach and the boulevard. It was crazy.
Well, I have a picture of what's that empty lot, IC4,
Yeah, I-4C2.
whatever it's
Yep.
called. That I got a picture of that with a foot of water in it,
Mm-hmm.
all the way up. So
Yeah.
anybody parked there would have gotten it too. But yeah.
Unbelievable. Anybody else? Good?
One more.
Sure, yeah.
The, I have,
Mhm.
but, and they're terrible. I always thought that was 7.
You called it the worst storm of the century.
Yeah, well, I just was going by the headlines of the day.
I think it has a lot to do with press
Mm.
and at the time.
That was devastating. wasn't
Yeah,
it?
the Portland, if we're talking about the same, the 38?
38.
Yeah, it's called the Portland Gale, I think, because it did so much damage up the coast. I don't remember it as being something, I think it did some pretty good damage to the fleet here, to the boats typical of what he was on, Numa was on. But I don't, it's not recognized, I don't think locally as a higher grade.
So what is the worst storm that we've endured? Do we know if it was 78 perfect storm, no
Well-
name?
Well, 78, I think, is the benchmark for all storms to be compared to.
Mm.
And again, now you have some colliding things with fortified seawalls, so you can't put them back the way they are and say, see, that was worse.
Right.
So I think 78 was worse because, well, you had 34 inches of snow as well. The National Guard had to be brought, just the whole thing. The perfect storm was just a coastal storm. It did a lot of damage. It destroyed a lot of property along the coast. But again, people inland don't know. The people that, the ones that create these storm indexes using all these different parameters, how much damage it costs, loss of life, loss of work. They have all these formulas, and Blizzard 78, believe it or not, is way down. And now this is all the northeast quadrant, is way down there, number 15, 16 on that index. So again, they use all these. I think if you lived here, if you saw the Blizzard of 78 and you walked, like I did, I lived in Gloucester at the time, and you walked downtown and watched, you had one picture of them downtown with the bucket loader, and you saw the mountains of snow, you could never be convinced that that would ever happen again. And it hasn't. And it hasn't. The Snowmageddon in 2015, yeah, that's 4 different storms over 2 weeks.
Right.
Talk about one storm doing all that damage over 3 days.
Yeah.
So,
Very cool. Okay, so before we go, we have to. Oh, there is. Oh, good. Go right ahead.
oh,
I know I'm late.
No, it's all good.
Sure this is, I think it's been just being a bar. And what is photograph? It's incredibly powerful that I think it was 2 things. One is that you got the family. You photography pictures of you, but it's a big deal to be trusted, and what has to happen is the photographers are. So that's one thing. But the other thing was Homer C. About the whole relation human. The result is that the boat but it really is way you're. I was at, which really is so many easily. So what if saying, oh, if I just took this, it would be wrong. But photography frame with time, but a bird. Yeah. Some ways, level of.
I'll relay that for the audience.
Go.
It was high praise, put it that way. Yeah.
It's very hard. I'm sure.
I just want to thank you for saying that. Oh, but Jay, you have a question.
Yeah, I have it. I would imagine probably was not. I'm not. Because I would not take a Leica out. Salt water heading my way. So, I mean, the two cameras that used. Yeah.
So, Newbart, we want to ask, what are you working on now?
What am I working on now? So, I've been working on movie I've just
And so, how can we learn more about that or find you and follow your progress there?
yes, need money. That's the problem. I mean, funding. Yes. So, I'm on. Name is Newbar. Newbar. You can go to newbar.com.
That's great. And of course, you can follow Chris at Cape Ann Weather on at least Facebook. You anywhere else?
Facebook and Blue Sky I'm getting into more.
Oh.
The Twitter alternative. Yeah, the Twitter alternative. So, yep.
Awesome stuff. Okay, well, yeah, go ahead, Nubra. Sure.
So, thank you for the work that they do and these videos.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. So we want to thank Newbar Alexanian and Chris Spittle for our guests tonight. Thank you both. Heather, great job as always. We're going to do this again next month. We'll email you if you're signed up for the 1623 newsletter and give you the dates there, and we'll see what pieces we're working on. Heather, do you know what piece you're thinking about doing yet? I have a couple that...
She ain't telling.
It may be the Hermit of Ravenswood Park, but that's only 5 or 6 minutes long. I kind of want to give that the Howard Blackburn hour-long treatment, but I don't have time for that. So maybe that, or as we get closer to baseball season, Stuffy McInnis, which he was the greatest, most accomplished athlete to ever come out of Cape Ann.
Should be in the hall.
Should be in the Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame, and there should be stadiums named after him all over the place. It's unbelievable. So one of those. Okay, you have that. All right, so stay tuned. Yeah, we'll share those with you shortly. Thanks for being here tonight, and thank you again, Newbar and Chris. Have a great night.
Thank you.